All right, let's dive straight into this explainer. You know that feeling, right? It's 3 a.m., you're staring at the ceiling, and you're just begging your brain to shut off. For decades, we've treated sleep like a light switch we can just flip at the end of the day. But trying to force sleep, it's a frustrating, totally futile effort. So today, we're going to reframe sleep entirely. We're going to explore the deep, systemic biology of rest, from evolutionary neurology all the way to clinical psychology. As you'll see, sleep isn't an on-off switch. It's an active physiological state that you can actually learn to master. So we have to open with this crazy biological paradox. Why does trying so hard to sleep actually keep you wide awake? Well, it's because your brain misinterprets your frustration as a literal life or death danger. Think about it from an evolutionary standpoint. Going to sleep while a predator is nearby is a terrible idea. So when you get stressed about not sleeping, your biology steps in and actively blocks rest to keep you alive. And this perfectly illustrates the dual nature of your autonomic nervous system. On one hand, you have this sympathetic system. This is your body's accelerator. It drives fight, flight, and mobilization, and it's fueled by high cortisol. On the other hand, you have the parasympathetic system. These are the brakes, responsible for deep rest, cellular repair, and feeling safe. The real problem: when chronic stress runs high for years, it's like you've been slamming the gas pedal for so long that your body literally forgets how to use the brakes. Which leads us to a state called autonomic hyperarousal. This means chronic insomnia isn't just a brain problem, it's a systemic, whole body issue. Your system gets locked into sympathetic dominance, just flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. For you to successfully fall asleep, your cardiovascular and respiratory systems absolutely must make a homeostatic transition into non-rapid eye movement, or NREM, parasympathetic dominance. But if you're stuck in hyperarousal, that crucial transition is biologically blocked. This is where Dr. Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory becomes a real game changer. It shows us that our nervous system doesn't just have two gears, it actually has three. There's ventral vagal for safety and social engagement, sympathetic for mobilization, and dorsal vagal for complete shutdown or immobilization. Through the lens of chronic stress, your nervous system might currently be perceiving your own bed as a literal threat, completely locking you out of that ventral vagal state of safety. Section 1. Decoding the vagus nerve, the 80% afferent superhighway. So, to understand how to unlock that feeling of safety, we have to look at the vagus nerve. This is the primary mechanical lever of your parasympathetic system. Now, you might assume your brain tells your body to relax, right? Actually, scratch that. It's mostly the other way around. Approximately 80% of vagal nerve fibers are afferent, meaning they send information bottom up from the body to the brain. By simply changing the way you breathe, your lungs send signals up the vagus nerve to physically downregulate your amygdala, your brain's fear center. You literally communicate safety to your brain through your body. And to ground all this abstract neurology into something we can actually measure, scientists look at heart rate variability. Specifically, there's a biomarker called RMSSD, which is highly sensitive to vagal input. A high RMSSD basically proves that your vagus nerve is effectively applying the brakes. It reflects high parasympathetic activity, adaptability, and really profound stress resilience. It's not just a random number. It's the definitive biological scorecard of how well your nervous system recovers from modern life. Section 2. Eliciting the relaxation response through bottom-up interventions. Okay, so how do we actually move the needle on those biomarkers? Way back in the 1970s, Harvard cardiologist Dr. Herbert Benson proved we all have a built-in biological mechanism to counteract stress, which he coined the relaxation response. Using specific, somatic, bottom-up techniques, you can voluntarily trigger a profound state of rest that instantly lowers your heart rate, blood pressure, and metabolic demands. And the absolute most direct way to trigger this response is through breath work, specifically breathing at a resonance frequency of 0.1 hertz. What does that mean in plain English? It translates to exactly 6 breaths per minute. Breathing at this precise, deliberate pace maximizes a phenomenon called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. This drastically boosts your cardiac vagal activity and sends a massive, undeniable safety signal straight up to your brain. When we compare different breathing patterns, say cyclic sighing for a quick reset or the really even rhythm of box breathing, we uncover a shared, hidden mechanism. It's the exhale. Breathing patterns that leverage longer exhalations specifically hack the vagus nerve. They chemically and electrically signal to your entire system that the environment is finally safe enough for sleep. One of the most famous methods for this is the 4-7-8 technique. It's derived from ancient yogic pranayama and is now huge in modern medicine. You inhale silently for 4 seconds, you hold that breath for 7, and then you exhale for a long, slow 8 seconds. This is a highly practical, fast-acting tool to actively decrease your heart rate and drop your blood pressure right before bed. Alternatively, you could use progressive muscle relaxation, or PMR, by intentionally squeezing and then completely releasing specific muscle groups. You heighten your internal body awareness and dump a ton of daytime muscle tension. Clinical studies show this physical release actually decreases the concentration of circulating cortisol in your blood. It physically blunts your HPA axis activation, perfectly clearing the hormonal pathway for you to fall asleep. Section 3, Rewiring the Brain Through Top-Down Clinical Interventions. Now here is a massive reality check. You cannot outbreathe a fundamentally broken relationship with sleep. Remember, sleep is like a shy bird. It absolutely cannot be forced, it can only be invited. If you take a breathing exercise and turn it into a rigid test to see if you can make yourself pass out, that performance anxiety will ironically cause a huge spike in sympathetic arousal. Breathwork is a fantastic tool, sure, but for chronic insomnia, it is not a standalone cure. It has to be paired with behavioral changes. And this is exactly where cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or CBTI, comes into play. It is the undisputed clinical gold standard for chronic sleep issues. Rather than just handing you a list of relaxation tips, CBTI provides structured behavioral protocols. It's designed to genuinely restore your biological sleep drive and uncouple your bed from that familiar feeling of 3 a.m. panic. CBTI is built on a few core behavioral pillars. Now, sure, it includes relaxation and basic sleep hygiene, but the real heavy lifters here are cognitive restructuring, which changes how you view sleep, and powerful behavioral tools like sleep restriction and stimulus control. Listen, these aren't just good habits. They are strict protocols meant to physically rewire your brain's conditioned threat responses regarding your bedroom. Take stimulus control therapy, for example. If you toss and turn for hours on end, your brain actually learns that the bed is a place for stress. But by strictly following SCT rules, like leaving the bed if you've been awake for 20 minutes and only returning when your eyelids are literally heavy, you break that negative association. You are Pavlovian conditioning your brain to recognize the bed as a trigger exclusively for sleep. The data on this is literally staggering. A massive meta-analysis found that CBTI produces an average reduction of 19 minutes in sleep latency. That's the time it takes you to fall asleep. And the best part? It yields long-term results that are completely equivalent to prescription sleep medications, but with zero chemical side effects and significantly lower relapse rates. Section 4. The compounding impact of autonomic balance. Let's zoom out for a second and look at the macrobiological outcomes of all this over the course of years and decades. What happens when you consistently combine bottom-up vagal stimulation with top-down behavioral rewiring? You build compounding interest for your health span. Regulating your autonomic nervous system dictates immune function. It drives the lymphatic clearance of toxins from your brain. It blunts systemic inflammation, and it protects your cognitive resilience against aging. You aren't just fixing tonight's rest. You're actively engineering your longevity. There's a quote from the literature that perfectly sums this up. Whereas sleeping pills mask the symptoms, CBTI promotes a genuine learning process that restores the body's natural sleep mechanism. Taking this active systems biology approach is infinitely superior to just masking the problem with a temporary sedative. Pills might force you into unconsciousness, but they absolutely do not teach your nervous system how to generate restorative, deep sleep on its own. So what is the ultimate takeaway here? You have to abandon the illusion of control. You cannot command yourself to sleep. Instead, your job is simply to cultivate physiological safety. By using your breath to slow the heart and behavioral rules to retrain the brain, you are perfectly setting the stage so that sleep can naturally emerge. I want to leave you with a final provocative question to ask yourself tonight. When you lie down, is your nervous system perceiving your bed as a sanctuary or a threat? By answering this honestly, you begin a totally new journey, not just into better sleep, but into the profound mastery of your own biology. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.